Have you ever walked past a mannequin in a store and felt like its eyes were following you? It's a common, slightly creepy feeling, but what if it was more than just a feeling? What if the mannequin was actually watching you? Today, we are diving into a story that will make you think twice the next time you go shopping. It's the chilling tale of a department store, a fashion-forward mannequin, and security footage that captured something truly unexplainable. This isn't just another ghost story. It's a mystery that unfolded hour by hour in plain sight. The setting is a bustling, high-end department store named La Vogue, a place known for its chic displays and the latest fashion trends. At the heart of its main floor stood a particularly striking mannequin named Eliza. She was known for her lifelike features, delicate hands, a serene expression, and glass eyes that seemed to hold a spark of life. Store managers loved using Eliza for their most exclusive outfits because everything looked good on her. But one Tuesday, the staff started noticing something strange. It began subtly. A morning shift employee, Maria, dressed Eliza in a brand-new elegant blue evening gown, ready for the day's display. An hour later, as she passed by, she did a double-take. Eliza was no longer in the blue gown. Instead, she was wearing a casual, floral sundress. Maria was confused. She thought maybe a manager had decided to change the display without telling anyone. She shrugged it off, assuming it was a simple miscommunication, and went about her duties. But an hour after that, another employee walked by and saw Eliza dressed in a sharp, tailored business suit. By lunchtime, the whispers had started. Every hour, like clockwork, Eliza was in a different outfit. The blue gown was replaced by the sundress by the suit by a sporty tennis outfit, and so on. The clothes were all from the racks nearby, perfectly styled and fitted. But who was doing it? The employees were baffled. They asked each other, but no one admitted to changing the mannequin. The floor manager was getting annoyed, thinking it was a prank by a new hire. He called a quick meeting, demanding to know who was messing with the main display. But everyone denied it, and their confusion seemed genuine. This wasn't just a simple prank. The outfits were changed flawlessly. Buttons were done up, zippers were perfect, and accessories were matched. It was the work of a professional. And to do it every hour in a busy store without anyone seeing, it seemed impossible. The manager, now more concerned than angry, decided there was only one way to get to the bottom of this. He would check the security footage. He was sure he'd catch the prankster red-handed. The security office was a small, quiet room away from the hustle of the shop floor. The manager, along with the security guard, sat down to review the tapes. They focused the playback on the area around Eliza. The camera had a clear, wide-angle view. They watched the sped-up footage, seeing the blurs of customers walking by, employees folding clothes, and the general rhythm of the store. They watched the moment Maria first dressed Eliza in the blue gown. Then they slowed the footage down as the next hour approached. They watched, their eyes glued to the screen, waiting for someone to approach the mannequin. Customers walked past, some glancing at the display, but no one touched it. Employees were busy with other tasks, nowhere near Eliza. Yet, as the hour mark hit, something impossible happened on screen. The blue gown seemed to melt away, and in its place the floral sundress materialized. It was like a visual glitch, a jump cut in a movie. There was no person, no hands, no movement. The clothes just changed. The manager and the guard stared at the screen in disbelief. They replayed the footage again and again. Each time, the result was the same. Every hour, the outfit on Eliza would switch with no visible cause. They checked the angles from other cameras. Nothing. It was as if the mannequin was changing clothes all by itself. A cold shiver ran down the manager's spine. This wasn't a prank. This was something else entirely. But the most terrifying discovery was yet to come. As they continued to watch the footage in stunned silence, the security guard noticed something else. He pointed a trembling finger at the screen and said, "Wait, look at its head." The manager leaned in closer. In the regular, sped-up footage, it was almost imperceptible. But when they slowed it down to real time, they saw it. Eliza's head, which was supposed to be fixed in a forward-facing pose, was moving. It was turning, slowly, almost mechanically from side to side. But it wasn't a random movement. Eliza's head was turning to follow the customers. As a shopper would walk past, her plastic head would pivot, her glass eyes tracking their movement until they were out of sight. Then her head would slowly turn to follow another person. She wasn't just a mannequin changing clothes, she was an observer, a silent sentinel watching the patrons of the store with an unnerving focus. The serene expression on her face no longer looked peaceful. It looked predatory. The atmosphere in the security office became thick with fear. The rhythmic changing of clothes was bizarre, but this was personal. The idea that this inanimate object was aware, that it was watching people, was deeply unsettling. The manager, a man who had seen it all in his years of retail, was speechless. He felt a primal fear, the kind you feel when the basic rules of reality seem to be breaking right in front of you. He knew he couldn't just ignore this. Word of the haunted mannequin spread like wildfire among the staff. Fear and fascination mixed in equal measure. Some employees were too scared to go near that section of the store, while others, morbidly curious, would walk past just to see if they could feel its eyes on them. The story leaked outside the store, and soon La Vogue had a new kind of customer. Ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts, all wanting to catch a glimpse of the now infamous Eliza. The store's management was in a difficult position. The publicity was drawing crowds, but it was also creating a chaotic and fearful environment for both staff and regular shoppers. They had to do something. They couldn't just get rid of the mannequin. By now, Eliza was a local legend. So they decided to move her. They took her off the main floor and placed her in a glass case in a less trafficked corner of the store, almost like a museum exhibit. The plaque simply read, Eliza. And did the strange phenomena stop? According to the store's lore, no. Employees who worked the late shifts, long after the last customer had gone home, would still report strange occurrences. They claimed that even locked inside her glass case, Eliza would appear in a different outfit from one day to the next. And sometimes, in the dead of night, if you looked closely, you could still see her head, slowly turning, her glass eyes scanning the empty, silent store, as if she was waiting. Waiting for the doors to open, waiting for the crowds to return, waiting for someone new to watch. So, what was Eliza? A cleverly orchestrated hoax? A collective delusion fueled by suggestion? Or was she something more? A vessel for a restless spirit with a passion for fashion? No one knows for sure. The story of the mannequin that changed its own clothes remains one of retail's most chilling and enduring mysteries. It serves as a strange reminder that sometimes the most ordinary places can hold the most extraordinary secrets. Next time you're out shopping and you walk past a mannequin, just take a quick look. See which way its head is facing, and if you happen to walk past it again an hour later, maybe check to see if it's still wearing the same thing. You might just find that you're in the presence of another Eliza. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this spooky story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more mysteries. See you next time. Have you ever had that strange feeling in a fitting room? The weird lighting, the silence, the endless mirrors reflecting back at you? Well, let me tell you a story that will make you think twice the next time you're trying on clothes. It's about a woman named Clara. Clara was a bargain hunter, a champion of thrift stores and vintage finds. One rainy Tuesday, she found herself in a dimly lit, labyrinthine second-hand shop called Echoes of Yesterday. It was the kind of place crammed to the ceiling with forgotten histories, each object whispering a story. Tucked away in the back, she found it. A magnificent, deep blue wool coat. It was classic, elegant, and felt like it was made just for her. She took it to the fitting room at the very end of a long, narrow hallway. The room was tiny, lined with 3 mirrors. As she shrugged on the coat, she admired the fit. It was perfect. The deep blue color made her eyes pop. She turned to see the back, and that's when it happened. She saw the coat, perfectly tailored, hanging in the air. She saw the beige walls of the fitting room, the dim overhead light, the scuffed floor. But where her face should have been, where her body should have been inside the coat, there was nothing. Just the back wall of the fitting room, seen straight through the empty collar. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She blinked, hard, convinced her eyes were playing tricks on her. She looked again. Nothing. It was like she had become a ghost, visible only by the clothes she wore. A cold dread, colder than the rainy day outside, washed over her. She reached up to touch her face, her fingers trembling. In the mirror, she saw the sleeve of the blue coat lift, but no hand, no arm, just an empty sleeve moving in the air. Panic began to bubble in her chest. She quickly fumbled with the buttons, her fingers feeling clumsy and foreign. She had to get the coat off. As she struggled, she glanced at the other mirrors. The one to her left showed the same horrifying emptiness, but the one on her right, that one was different. In the reflection on the right, she saw herself. But it wasn't her. It was a woman, pale and with sorrowful eyes, wearing the exact same coat. The woman in the mirror wasn't panicking. She was just standing there, a faint, sad smile on her lips, as if she was waiting for something. Clara gasped and stumbled back, her real-world self, or what was left of it, hitting the wall. Who was that woman? Was this a trick? A prank? The woman in the mirror slowly raised a hand and pressed it against the glass from her side. It wasn't a gesture of menace, but of understanding, of sympathy. Clara, now terrified beyond reason, finally managed to rip the coat off her shoulders. The moment the fabric left her skin, she reappeared in the central mirror. Her own frantic, pale face stared back at her. Her chest was heaving, her hair a mess. She was there. She was solid. She was real. She looked at the mirror on the right. It was empty now, just a reflection of the side of the fitting room. The sad-eyed woman was gone. She didn't even bother to hang the coat back up. She threw it on the floor, burst out of the fitting room, and ran. She didn't stop running until she was several blocks away, the cold rain soaking her clothes, the sound of her own heartbeat deafening in her ears. She never found out the story of that coat, or who the woman in the mirror was. Was it the coat's original owner, trapped between worlds? A spirit tethered to the object she once loved? Clara didn't want to know. Some objects, you see, don't just have a history. They carry it with them. They hold on to the echoes of the people who owned them, sometimes a little too strongly. So the next time you find a perfect vintage piece, a beautiful coat that feels like it was made just for you, maybe pause for a second. Maybe wonder about the life it lived before you. And when you take it to the fitting room, just be sure that when you look in the mirror, it's really you looking back. What do you think happened? Was it a ghost, a trick of the light, or something else entirely? Let me know your theories down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. And if you enjoyed this spooky tale, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from the strange and unexplained. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there. Have you ever walked into a restaurant and felt like something was off? That's what happened to a group of friends one rainy Tuesday night. The place was called the Gilded Spoon, a new, trendy spot that had just opened downtown. From the outside it looked inviting, all warm lights and polished wood. But inside, a strange stillness hung in the air. The hostess greeted them with a smile. A perfect smile. A bit too perfect. Her teeth were unnaturally white, her lips curved in an exact, pleasant arc. But her eyes, they were fixed, staring straight ahead, not a flicker of movement. The friends exchanged glances but shrugged it off. Maybe she was just tired. They were led to their table by a waiter who also had that same smile, and the same empty, unblinking eyes. He moved with a smooth, almost gliding motion, setting down menus without a word. The friends started to get a little creeped out. One of them, a guy named Liam, tried to make a joke. "Hey, you guys must love your jobs, huh? All smiles tonight." The waiter didn't respond. His smile didn't waver. He simply turned and glided away. Now, things were officially weird. They looked around the dining room. Every single staff member, the busboys clearing tables, the bartenders polishing glasses, even the chefs visible through the kitchen window, had the exact same expression. A wide, fixed, perfect smile. And none of them, not a single one, ever blinked. Imagine sitting in a room full of people who look like mannequins that have come to life. Their bodies moved, performing their duties with flawless efficiency, but their faces were frozen masks of cheerfulness. It was deeply unsettling. Another friend, Sarah, whispered, "This is like a horror movie. I feel like we're being watched by statues." They tried to ignore it, focusing on the menu. The food descriptions were elaborate and tempting. They decided to order, hoping the food would be normal at least. Liam flagged down a waitress. She approached their table, her smile a beacon of manufactured joy. "Are you ready to order?" she asked, her voice melodious but completely flat, devoid of any real emotion. Liam tried again. "Yeah, but first, can I ask you a question? Is this, like, a theme? The whole not blinking thing?" The waitress tilted her head slightly, a mechanical, bird-like movement. Her smile remained perfectly in place. "We aim to provide a consistently pleasant experience for all our guests," she said, the words sounding rehearsed and hollow. Her eyes, wide and glassy, stared straight through him. A chill ran down their spines. This wasn't a theme. This was something else. They quickly placed their orders, their appetites suddenly gone. As the waitress walked away, they noticed something even stranger. Her movements and the movements of all the staff were synchronized. When one turned, another across the room would turn in the same way, at the same angle. It was like they were all part of a single coordinated machine. The food arrived, carried on trays by more smiling, unblinking staff. It looked incredible, a work of art, but no one could bring themselves to take a bite. The atmosphere was just too heavy, too strange. They watched as other diners ate and laughed, seemingly oblivious to the uncanny valley they were dining in. "Are we the only ones who see this?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. Then Liam noticed something on the wall. It was a small framed plaque, almost hidden behind a plant. He got up and walked over to it. It read, "The Gilded Spoon. Where service is a perfected art. Our staff is dedicated to ensuring your complete satisfaction, without distraction." Below that, in much smaller print, it said, "Proprietary Automaton Technology by Syntho-Serve Industries." Automaton technology. Robots. They weren't people. They were incredibly advanced, lifelike androids. A wave of relief washed over Liam, followed immediately by a fresh wave of unease. He went back to the table and told his friends. It explained the perfect smiles, the unblinking eyes, the synchronized movements. They were dining in a restaurant run entirely by robots. But the relief didn't last. Knowing they were robots didn't make it any less creepy. In fact, it might have made it worse. The illusion of humanity was shattered, leaving only the cold, hard truth of machinery mimicking life. The food sat untouched on their plates. The unblinking eyes of the robot staff seemed to bore into them, their perfect smiles now feeling like a threat. Suddenly, a fork clattered to the floor at a nearby table. Instantly, 3 staff members turned their heads in perfect unison, their smiles unwavering, and stared at the spot where the fork had fallen. Their movements were so fast, so precise, it was unnerving. A busboy robot glided over, bent down in a single fluid motion, picked up the fork, and placed a new one on the table, all without its expression ever changing. That was the last straw. Liam threw some cash on the table, more than enough to cover the uneaten food. "We're leaving," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Now." They stood up and walked quickly towards the exit, not daring to look back. As they passed the hostess stand, the same automaton who had greeted them was standing there, her smile as perfect and empty as before. "Thank you for dining at the Gilded Spoon. she said in her flat, pleasant voice. "We hope your experience was satisfactory." As the door closed behind them, they all let out a breath they didn't realize they'd been holding. They stood on the pavement in the rain, looking back at the warm, inviting glow of the restaurant. Through the window, they could see the staff, still moving, still smiling, still not blinking. It was a perfect picture of service, and the most terrifying thing they had ever seen. The next time you see a smile that looks a little too perfect, maybe take a closer look. You never know who or what is looking back. Thanks for watching this story unfold with me. If you enjoy tales of the strange and unexplained, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Let me know in the comments what you would have done in this situation. Stay curious, and I'll see you in the next video. Have you ever walked into a store and felt like something was just off? Like the air was a little too still, the lights a little too dim? Today, we're diving into a story that starts with something as ordinary as a sale, but ends with a chilling mystery that's never been solved. This is the story of the sale signs written in blood red ink. Our story takes place in a small, unassuming town, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone and nothing much ever happens. At the heart of this town was a department store called Miller's Emporium. It had been there for generations, a reliable old building filled with everything from clothing to hardware. It was a community staple. One crisp autumn morning, the townspeople woke up to a surprise. Every single window of Miller's Emporium was plastered with bright red signs. "Sale!" they screamed in bold, jagged letters. "Everything must go!" This was unusual. Miller's rarely had big sales, and when they did, they were announced weeks in advance. This felt frantic. Curiosity got the better of everyone. A crowd started to gather, their breath misting in the cool air. Pushing open the heavy oak doors, they were met with an astonishing sight. Inside, it was a sea of red. Every single item in the store, from the finest china to the most mundane box of nails, had a handwritten price tag dangling from it. And every single tag was written in the same shocking, vibrant, blood-red ink. The prices were unbelievable. A $50 coat was marked down to $5. A $100 watch was just $10. It was a bargain hunter's dream come true. People started grabbing items, their initial unease replaced by the thrill of a good deal. The store, usually quiet and orderly, descended into a frenzy of excited shoppers. But some of the longtime employees felt a growing sense of dread. The store manager, a man named Arthur Gable, hadn't been seen all morning. This was unheard of. Arthur was a creature of habit, always the first to arrive and the last to leave. His office door was locked, which was also strange. As the day wore on, a few people started to notice something peculiar about the red ink on the tags. It wasn't flat like regular ink. It had a strange, slightly raised texture, and in the bright store lights it seemed to have an almost organic sheen. An employee named Clara, who'd worked at the store for 30 years, picked up a tag. She ran her finger over the lettering and then, on a whim, brought it to her nose. A faint, coppery smell hung in the air, a scent she couldn't quite place but which made the hairs on her arms stand up. The shopping chaos continued until midday. People were lining up, their arms full of discounted treasures. But the cash registers were empty. No one was there to take their money. The employees called out for Arthur, their voices echoing in the now crowded store, but there was no reply. Finally, someone decided to call the police. When the officers arrived, they found the scene just as the townspeople had: a store in disarray, filled with shoppers and an overwhelming number of red tags. Their first priority was to find the missing manager. After getting no response from his locked office, they forced the door open. The office was immaculate. Papers were neatly stacked, the chair was pushed in, and Arthur's coat was still hanging on the hook. There was no sign of a struggle, no sign of Arthur. The only thing out of place was on his desk. Lying in the center was a single, pristine, blank price tag and a small, uncapped fountain pen. The nib of the pen was stained with that same brilliant red. The investigation began immediately. The police questioned everyone: the shoppers, the employees, the neighbors. No one had seen Arthur Gable leave. No one had seen anyone enter the store overnight to put up the signs. It was as if the sale had manifested out of thin air. One of the detectives, a practical man not prone to flights of fancy, collected several of the price tags as evidence. He sent them to the state crime lab for analysis. He was expecting a report about a specific brand of red ink, maybe a clue that would lead them to a supplier or a recent purchase. A week later, the lab results came back, and the report sent a shiver down the entire department's spine. The analysis was conclusive. The substance used to write on every single tag in the store was not ink. It was human blood. Type O negative. The case took a horrifying turn. Suddenly, this wasn't just a strange prank. It was a potential crime scene. The entire store was now under investigation. They re-examined Arthur's office, the stockrooms, the entire building, looking for any sign of violence, any clue as to where such a massive quantity of blood could have come from. They found nothing, not a drop out of place other than the writing on the tags. The police then looked into the store's supply orders, thinking maybe Arthur or someone else had purchased a large quantity of red ink for a promotion. They went through months of invoices and records. The store had ordered blue ink, black ink, even green ink for their regular pricing guns. But the records were clear. Miller S. Emporium had not ordered a single bottle of red ink in over 5 years. This fact only deepened the mystery. Where did the blood come from? And where was Arthur Gable? His blood type was A positive, so the blood on the tags wasn't his. The police ran the blood type through every database they had, but it matched no one in the system. No missing persons, no known criminals. The town was gripped by fear. Miller's Emporium was closed indefinitely, its windows now dark and empty. The red signs taken down by investigators. Theories swirled around the small community. Some said Arthur had stumbled upon something he shouldn't have and was silenced. Others whispered that he had made a deal with something dark, sacrificing something, or someone, for one last massive sale before disappearing. The more superstitious townspeople claimed it was the work of a ghost, an old spirit tied to the building, finally making its presence known. Years have passed since that day. Miller's Emporium never reopened. The building still stands, a silent monument to the bizarre events that unfolded within its walls. Arthur Gable was never found. He was declared legally dead 7 years after his disappearance, but his case remains open. And the biggest question of all remains unanswered. If the blood didn't belong to Arthur, and it didn't belong to anyone in any database, then whose was it? And how could one person, or even a group of people, possibly produce enough of it to write on thousands of price tags, all in a single night, without leaving a single other trace behind? The sale signs written in blood-red ink have become a local legend, a chilling reminder that sometimes the most mundane things can hide the darkest of secrets. What do you think happened at Miller's Emporium? Was it a clever marketing ploy that went horribly wrong, or something far more sinister and unexplainable? Let me know your theories down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this dive into the unknown, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more mysteries. Stay curious and stay safe. Black Friday. A day of frantic energy. A sea of shoppers all pushing for the best deals. I was working security at the Mega Mall, a job that usually meant dealing with petty shoplifters and lost kids. But this year, things were different. The chaos was thicker, more desperate. As the night wore on, we started getting reports, not of theft, but of people just disappearing. The mall was closing, the last few stragglers being herded towards the exits. That's when my partner Dave radioed in. He was doing a final sweep of the new East Wing. "Hey, you seeing this on Cam 12? He asked, his voice tight. "This exit sign. It's not on the floor plan." I pulled up the schematics on my tablet. He was right. The blueprints showed a solid wall where Cam 12 showed a brightly lit exit sign, buzzing with a weird green neon glow. "Stay put, Dave. I'm coming to you," I said, my heart starting to pound a rhythm against my ribs. The main concourse was eerily quiet now, littered with discarded shopping bags and sale flyers. It felt like the aftermath of a battle. The air was cold, and the usual festive music had been replaced by a low, almost imperceptible hum. As I got closer to the east wing, the hum grew louder, vibrating through the soles of my shoes. I found the hallway. It wasn't just the sign that was wrong. The entire corridor shouldn't have been there. It stretched into a darkness that the fluorescent lights couldn't seem to penetrate. The walls were a strange, seamless material, cool to the touch, and the floor was polished to a mirror-like sheen. It reflected the green exit sign over and over, creating an infinite tunnel of glowing doors. "Dave," I called out, my voice sounding small and thin. No answer, only the hum. His radio was on the floor, just inside the entrance to the strange hallway. It was still on, but all I could hear was static. I peered into the corridor. It smelled of ozone and something else, something vaguely sweet, like overripe fruit. It felt wrong. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to turn around, to get out of the mall and never look back. But Dave was in there. He was my partner. I took a breath, clicked on my flashlight, and stepped across the threshold. The moment I did, the world outside vanished. I turned around, and the bustling, familiar mall was gone. Behind me was just more of the same endless, dark corridor. The green exit sign that had lured me in was now just one of many, stretching into the distance in both directions. The humming intensified, and I felt a strange pressure in my ears. I was trapped. Panic began to set in, cold and sharp. I started running, my footsteps echoing unnaturally in the silence. Every door I passed was identical. "Exit!" they all proclaimed in that sickly green light. I tried one. The handle was cold as ice and it wouldn't budge. I tried another and another, all locked, all solid. It was like they were just images projected onto the wall. Hours, or maybe days, passed. Time had no meaning in this place. The only thing that changed was the slow, creeping dread that was seeping into my bones. I was getting thirsty, hungry. I kept walking, calling Dave's name until my throat was raw. Sometimes in the distance I thought I saw movement, a flicker of shadow, a shape that darted from one doorway to another, always just at the edge of my vision. Then I started finding things. A single shoe, a dropped wallet, a child's toy. Possessions of the shoppers who had been reported missing. They were laid out on the floor as if they were exhibits in a museum. Each item was a silent testament to a life interrupted, a person lured into this impossible place by the promise of an easy way out. They had all seen the sign, just like Dave, just like me. I finally collapsed from exhaustion, my back against one of the unyielding walls. The humming was inside my head now, a constant, droning song. I closed my eyes, and for the first time, I heard a voice amidst the static of my own thoughts. It wasn't speaking words, but it was communicating. It showed me images. Images of a vast, empty space between spaces. A hunter that fed not on flesh, but on hope. It baited its trap with the thing people desire most in a crowd, an escape, an open door, the last door out. I don't know how long I've been here. I'm still walking. The hallway never ends. Sometimes I find a new item, a fresh reminder that I'm not the only one. I'm recording this on my phone, hoping that somehow the signal can escape this place even if I can't. If you're watching this, don't ever follow a door that feels too good to be true. On Black Friday, or any other day, some exits don't lead out. They lead in. Deeper and deeper into a place where the only thing for sale is your own lost soul. So if you see an exit that isn't on the map, run. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more tales from the shadows. Stay safe out there and always be aware of your surroundings. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into one of the most bizarre and frankly unsettling stories I've ever come across. It has a tale that sounds like it's ripped straight from a surrealist film or a strange dream. But for a group of shoppers, it was an all-too-real and seemingly endless ordeal. Imagine this. You're at a bustling shopping mall. Maybe you've just grabbed a coffee, and you step onto an escalator to head up to the next floor. It's a mundane, everyday action you've done 1,000 times. But what if this time, the escalator just didn't stop? What if you kept ascending and ascending, but the top floor never seemed to get any closer? This is the story of the escalator that never stopped, a mechanical glitch that trapped unsuspecting shoppers in an endless upward cycle. It was a normal Saturday afternoon at the newly opened Apex Galleria, a sprawling, multi-story shopping complex that had quickly become the city's go-to destination. People were milling about, bags in hand, the air filled with the familiar hum of commerce and conversation. On the ground floor, near the central atrium, a group of shoppers approached the main escalator bank leading to the second-floor electronics and home goods section. There was a family with 2 kids excited about a new video game, a young couple on a date, and a few individuals just browsing. They stepped on, the rubber handrail smooth beneath their palms, the metal steps clicking into place as they began their ascent. The first few seconds were completely normal. They rose past the ground floor, watching the shoppers below shrink into smaller figures. But then, something strange happened. They should have been approaching the landing of the second floor, but it was still stubbornly out of reach. At first, no one really noticed. People are often lost in their own worlds on an escalator, checking their phones, talking to their companions, or just staring into space. But after a full minute of continuous climbing, a few heads started to look up with confusion. The second floor wasn't getting any closer. It was like a mirage in a desert, always visible but perpetually distant. A man in a business suit, who had been impatiently tapping his foot, was the first to voice the collective thought. "Is this thing broken?" he muttered to the woman next to him. She just shrugged, a nervous smile on her face. The kids in the family started to get restless. "Are we there yet?" one of them whined, a question that was usually reserved for long car rides, not a 30-second escalator trip. The mood began to shift from mild confusion to a growing sense of unease. They were clearly moving upwards, yet they were making no progress. It defied logic. Minutes started to stretch into what felt like an eternity. 10 minutes. 20 minutes. They were trapped in a bizarre, vertical loop. Panic started to set in. The couple on the date held hands tightly, their earlier laughter replaced by wide, fearful eyes. The father of the family tried to keep his children calm, but even his own voice wavered. They were stuck. They tried walking up the moving stairs, hoping to somehow outpace the malfunction and reach the top. They climbed and climbed, their legs starting to burn with effort, but it was useless. The top floor remained tantalizingly out of reach, as if the escalator was generating new steps from an infinite supply, pulling the landing further away with every foot they gained. It was a Sisyphean task, a nightmare of endless effort with zero reward. People below had started to notice. A crowd was gathering at the bottom, pointing their phones up, filming the bizarre spectacle. From their perspective, the escalator looked perfectly normal, with people on it simply ascending as usual. They couldn't see the loop. The shoppers on the escalator were now in a state of controlled panic. They yelled down to the crowd below, "It's broken! We're stuck! Call for help!" But their voices were muffled by the ambient noise of the mall. To the people on the ground floor, it looked like they were just waving. Some people waved back, smiling, thinking it was some kind of prank or flash mob. The sense of isolation was crushing. They were in plain sight of hundreds of people, yet they were completely alone in their strange vertical prison. Hours began to pass. The initial adrenaline gave way to exhaustion. People sat down on the moving steps, resigned to their fate. The sun began to set outside the mall's massive glass ceiling, casting long shadows that made their predicament feel even more surreal and sinister. They had been on this escalator for what felt like a lifetime, caught in a mechanical purgatory, endlessly climbing toward a destination they could never reach. The engineering of this nightmare was later found to be a 1 in a billion glitch. It wasn't a loop in the physical sense, that would be impossible. The malfunction was far more subtle and terrifying. A critical sensor at the top landing, designed to regulate the motor's speed and synchronize it with the building's structure, had failed in a very specific way. Instead of maintaining a constant speed, it was causing the escalator's motor to minutely, almost imperceptibly, accelerate. At the same time, a secondary system that controlled the structural alignment of the escalator truss began to malfunction in sync. It was causing the entire escalator structure to slowly, fractionally, retract downwards into the foundation, even as the steps themselves were moving up. The two opposing motions, the upward movement of the stairs and the downward creep of the entire structure, perfectly canceled each other out. So, while the steps were moving, the passengers themselves were held in a state of vertical stasis relative to the building's floors. They were climbing an endless mountain that was simultaneously sinking into the ground. It was an engineering student in the crowd below who finally figured it out. Watching the videos on people's phones, she noticed a tiny, almost invisible flicker in the overhead light's reflection on the escalator's side panels. It was a subtle distortion, but it was happening at a regular interval. She realized it wasn't a reflection issue. The escalator itself was moving in a way it shouldn't be. She alerted mall security, explaining her theory about a dual system failure creating a relative motion trap. Security, initially skeptical, finally escalated the issue to the mall's chief engineer. When the engineer reviewed the system diagnostics, his face went pale. The student was right. The escalator was essentially running in place, trapping its occupants. An emergency stop was immediately triggered, and the escalator shuddered to a halt. For the people on board, the sudden silence was more jarring than the constant motion. They were still stuck, halfway between floors, but at least the endless journey was over. Maintenance crews had to construct a temporary scaffold to help the exhausted and bewildered shoppers get off the escalator. When their feet finally touched a solid, stationary surface, some of them stumbled, their bodies so accustomed to the constant upward motion. They had been trapped for nearly 5 hours. The story became a local legend, a cautionary tale about technology and the strange ways it can fail. The escalator to nowhere, as the media dubbed it, was a glitch in the matrix, a brief, terrifying glimpse into a world where the laws of physics and mechanics seemed to bend. For the shoppers who lived through it, a simple trip to the mall would never feel quite the same again. It served as a stark reminder that even the most mundane parts of our modern world operate on complex systems, and sometimes those systems can create a reality stranger than any fiction. This story is a fascinating look at a truly unique and specific type of mechanical failure. It wasn't just a simple breakdown. It was two separate systems failing in perfect, terrible harmony to create a situation that seemed to defy logic. It highlights our complete dependence on the flawless operation of the technology that surrounds us every single day. We step onto escalators, get into elevators, and board trains, with an implicit trust that they will take us where we want to go. This story shows what can happen when that trust is broken in the most bizarre way possible. It's a modern-day myth, a testament to the unpredictable nature of our own creations. What do you think? Have you ever heard a stranger story about a machine malfunctioning? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this dive into the weird and wonderful, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more content. I'll see you in the next one. Have you ever felt a chill run down your spine when you see something that just doesn't add up? Picture this, a busy supermarket, the usual weekend chaos. People are rushing through aisles, grabbing groceries, trying to get home. Then, amidst the noise, a tiny voice cuts through. It's a little girl, no older than 6, with wide, innocent eyes and pigtails bouncing as she walks. She's lost. But this isn't your typical lost child scenario. She isn't crying for her mommy. She's calling out names. Your name. My name. Everyone's name. It started at the dairy section. A man named David was reaching for a carton of milk when he heard it. "David," she said, her voice clear as a bell. He turned, confused. "Do you know me, little one?" he asked, crouching down. The girl just smiled, a knowing, slightly unnerving smile. "You forgot to call your mom on her birthday last week, David. She was very sad." David froze. How could she possibly know that? He hadn't told anyone. He quickly looked around, unnerved, but she had already moved on. Next, she was in the snack aisle standing before a woman named Sarah, who was trying to decide between chips and pretzels. "Sarah," the little girl chirped. Sarah looked down, her heart softening at the sight of the lost child. "Hello there. Are you looking for your parents?" The girl shook her head. "You told your friend you liked her new haircut, but you didn't. You think it looks silly." Sarah's friendly expression vanished, replaced by shock. It was a fleeting, private thought she'd had just that morning. She felt a flush of embarrassment and fear creep up her neck. Who was this child? The whispers started to spread through the store like a ripple in a pond. People were looking over their shoulders, their shopping carts forgotten. The little girl continued her journey, a tiny oracle wandering through the fluorescent-lit aisles. She approached a teenager named Mark, who was trying to discreetly slip a candy bar into his pocket. "Mark," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "your dad worked really hard for the money in his wallet. You shouldn't take it without asking." Mark's hand shot out of his pocket as if he'd been burned. He stared at her, his face pale, before dropping the candy bar and running out of the store. By now, a crowd was starting to form, following her at a safe distance. They were a mix of curious, scared, and fascinated. The store manager, a flustered man named Mr. Henderson, finally pushed his way through. All right, what's all the commotion? Young lady, are you lost? Where are your parents?" he asked, trying to sound authoritative. The girl looked up at him, her gaze piercing. "Mr. Henderson," she began, "you told your wife you were working late last night, but you were at the bowling alley with your friends." The manager's face turned a deep shade of red. He stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence as the customers around him exchanged knowing glances. The secret was out. The atmosphere in the supermarket had completely transformed. It was no longer a place of mundane errands. It was a hall of judgment, and this little girl was the judge. She didn't seem malicious. Her tone wasn't accusatory. It was simple, matter-of-fact, as if she were just stating the weather. But the truth she spoke were anything but simple. They were the little white lies, the hidden resentments, the secret shames that everyone carries with them. She saw a woman and said, "You pretend to love the vase your sister gave you, but you keep it hidden in a closet." She pointed to a man and said, "You took credit for your co-worker's idea, and now he might lose his job." With each revelation, the tension grew. People stopped looking at the girl and started looking at each other, their eyes filled with suspicion and newfound awareness. The bonds of polite society were fraying. They weren't just fellow shoppers anymore. They were a collection of exposed secrets. The lies that held their daily interactions together were being systematically dismantled by a child who couldn't even reach the top shelf. Was she an angel? A demon? Some kind of bizarre social experiment? No one knew, but everyone felt the weight of her words. The manager, having recovered slightly from his own exposure, finally called the police. 2 officers, a man and a woman, arrived, looking bewildered by the scene. The entire store was at a standstill, 100 or so people silently watching a little girl who was now humming to herself by the checkout counters. "We got a call about a lost child?" The female officer, Officer Chen, said cautiously. Mr. Henderson just pointed. "It's her. But be careful. She knows things." Officer Chen approached the girl gently. "Hi there. I'm Officer Chen. What's your name?" The little girl looked up, her smile returning. "I don't have one," she replied sweetly, "but your name is Maria, and you're worried about your son's grades, but you're afraid to push him too hard because you don't want him to resent you like you resented your own father." Officer Chen took an involuntary step back. Her partner, Officer Miller, put a hand on her shoulder. "What's going on?" he whispered. Before she could answer, the girl turned to him. "And you, Officer Miller," she said, her voice losing none of its childlike innocence. "You still feel guilty about not visiting your grandfather in the hospital before he passed away. You were just too busy." Officer Miller's face hardened, a wall of professionalism trying to mask the sudden pain in his eyes. He had shared that regret with no one, not even his wife. The situation was spiraling beyond anyone's control. What do you do with a child who can see directly into your soul? You can't arrest her. You can't reason with her. They stood there, two armed police officers completely powerless against a 6-year-old. And then, as suddenly as it began, it started to end. The little girl yawned, a big, theatrical yawn. "I'm sleepy," she announced to the silent, watching crowd. She walked towards the automatic doors at the front of the store. No one moved to stop her. They were all frozen, caught in the web of truths she had woven. As she reached the doors, they slid open. She paused on the threshold and turned back to look at the people inside the store. Her unnerving smile was gone, replaced by a look of profound, almost adult-like sadness. "It's so heavy," she whispered, though her voice carried to every corner of the silent supermarket. "All of it. You should try letting it go." And with that, she turned and walked out into the fading afternoon light. She didn't look back. Everyone rushed to the windows, watching as she walked down the street. She didn't get into a car. She didn't meet anyone. She just kept walking, getting smaller and smaller until she turned a corner and disappeared completely. Silence remained in the store for a long time. Then, slowly, people began to move. But something had changed. David, the man from the dairy aisle, pulled out his phone and called his mother. Sarah, from the snack aisle, sent a text to her friend apologizing for her dishonesty. All around the store, in small, quiet ways, people started to heed the little girl's final words. They started to let go of the heavy secrets they carried. No one ever saw the little girl again. There was no police report, no missing child alert that matched her description. It was as if she had been a collective hallucination. But for the people in that supermarket on that particular day, she was very, very real. She was the lost child who knew everyone's name, and in finding them, she helped them find a little bit of their own lost truth. What do you think? Who or what was she? A figment of their collective guilt, or something more? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more mysteries. See you next time. Ever walked into a store so strange, so peculiar, that the air itself felt different? A place where the rules of everyday commerce just don't apply? Let me tell you about a little shop tucked away on a forgotten cobblestone street, a place most people walk right past without a second glance. It had no name, just a simple hand-painted sign swinging gently in the breeze. The sign read, "Buy something, leave something of value behind." An odd request, right? Most of us are used to just paying with cash or a card, but here, the price was more than just money. I first heard about it from an old friend, a collector of oddities. He described it as a treasure trove of the bizarre and the beautiful. Antique music boxes that played forgotten melodies, dusty books filled with stories that never made it to print, vintage compasses that seemed to point somewhere other than north. He told me he'd bought a beautiful, tarnished silver locket. And what did he leave behind? He just smiled and said, "A memory I was ready to let go of." That was the real currency of the shop. Not just what was in your wallet, but what was in your heart. Intrigued, I decided to find this place myself. It took me a week of searching, but finally I found it, exactly as described. The bell above the door chimed a soft, melodic note as I stepped inside. The air was thick with the scent of old paper, polished wood, and something else, something like dried lavender and rain. The shop was cluttered but clean. every item seemingly placed with intention. An elderly man with kind, crinkling eyes and a cascade of white hair looked up from behind a counter piled high with leather-bound journals. He didn't say a word, just gave me a gentle nod, a silent invitation to explore. I spent what felt like hours wandering through the narrow aisles. I saw a ship in a bottle, its sails perfectly unfurled, a set of porcelain dolls with eerily lifelike eyes, and a vintage camera that looked like it had captured 1,000 untold stories. I felt a strange pull, a sense of connection to these objects. It was as if each one was whispering its history to me. Finally, my eyes landed on it. A small, wooden spinning top, worn smooth with time. It wasn't flashy or valuable in a monetary sense, but holding it, I felt a sense of childhood wonder I thought I'd lost long ago. I brought it to the counter. The old man smiled. "A fine choice," he said, his voice raspy but warm. "It has seen many happy afternoons." I pulled out my wallet, but he gently shook his head, pointing a long, bony finger at the sign. "Buy something. Leave something of value behind." My mind raced. What could I possibly leave? I didn't have any heirlooms on me. I didn't have a grand, poetic memory I was ready to part with. A flicker of panic set in. What did he mean by value? Then I remembered a small, smooth stone I'd carried in my pocket for years. I'd picked it up from a beach on a day I felt completely lost, and somehow, its weight in my pocket had always been a quiet comfort, a reminder to stay grounded. It wasn't worth anything to anyone else, but to me, it was a symbol of resilience. With a deep breath, I placed the stone on the counter next to the spinning top. The old man picked it up, turning it over in his palm. He looked at it, then at me, and his smile widened. "A fair trade," he said. "This holds the weight of a journey. It will find a good home here." I paid a small amount of cash for the top, and as I left the shop, bell chiming behind me, I felt lighter, as if I'd left a burden I didn't even know I was carrying. Now, this is where the story gets really strange. Remember the sign? And the rule? Well, it turns out, not everyone respects the rules. A few weeks after my visit, I heard whispers around town, stories about people who had visited the shop, taken something and left nothing but a few crumpled bills. They'd scoffed at the old man, called his rule a silly gimmick, and walked out with their treasures, feeling smug and clever. One story was about a man, a wealthy businessman known for his ruthless deals. He'd gone into the shop and bought an antique, ornate fountain pen. When the shopkeeper reminded him of the rule, the man had laughed. "My money is what's valuable, old man," he'd said, throwing a wad of cash on the counter and storming out. He left nothing else. That night, he went home to his lavish apartment, but something felt wrong. He told a colleague he felt a constant, nagging sense of being watched. He'd check his locks, draw his blinds, but the feeling wouldn't go away. It was like a shadow had detached itself from the corner of his eye and was always just out of sight. His life started to unravel. He began losing things. Not important things at first, a sock, his car keys, his favorite coffee mug, but then it escalated. He lost a major client, then another. His sharp business acumen, the very thing that defined him, began to dull. He grew forgetful, paranoid. The confidence he once had was replaced by a hollow-eyed anxiety. It was as if the value he had refused to give, the universe, or perhaps the little shop, was taking back from him piece by piece. He had taken something of value, the pen, but left nothing of himself, so something of himself was now being taken. Then there was the story of a young woman, a social media influencer, who visited the shop. She saw the rule as a perfect photo opportunity. She filmed herself browsing, picked out a delicate vintage mirror, and for her item of value, she left a signed 8x10 glossy photo of herself. She thought it was clever, ironic even. She left, posted her video, and got thousands of likes. But then, strange things started to happen. Her reflection in the vintage mirror began to change. At first, it was subtle, a strand of hair out of place that wasn't there in reality. Then, her reflection would have a sad expression when she was smiling. It grew more and more distorted, until one day she looked into the mirror and saw a version of herself that was old, tired, and completely alone. She became obsessed. The perfect, curated image she had built for herself online started to crack. She stopped posting, terrified of what her followers might see, of what the camera might capture. The mirror had taken the vanity she offered and was showing her the empty truth behind it. The value she had left, a superficial image, was being reflected back at her in the most terrifying way. She had left an empty representation of herself, and in return, her own self-worth felt like it was becoming empty. These stories, and others like them, all shared a common thread. Those who took without giving, who treated the shop's rule with contempt, didn't just walk away. They left with something extra, an unseen attachment. It was a creeping sense of loss, a shadow of misfortune that clung to them. It was as if they had created a void by refusing to participate in the shop's unique exchange, and that void had followed them home, slowly draining the value from their own lives. The shop wasn't just a store. It was a scale, a place of balance. It operated on a principle far older than money, the law of reciprocity. You can't just take in this world. You have to give something back. The value doesn't have to be monetary. It can be a memory, a story, a hope, a fear, a simple stone from a beach. It just has to be real. It has to be a piece of you. By leaving something behind, you weren't just completing a transaction. You were engaging in an act of balance, of letting go. Those who ignored the rule broke that balance. They created a debt. And the shop, in its own quiet, mysterious way, always collects. It takes back the value that was refused, not in dollars and cents, but in luck, in peace of mind, in the very essence of what makes a person's life feel full. It's a powerful reminder, isn't it? What we take and what we give defines the world we create for ourselves. Sometimes the most valuable things we possess are the things we are willing to let go of. And sometimes the highest price we pay is for the things we take for free. I still have that wooden spinning top. I keep it on my desk. Every time I look at it, I'm reminded of the little shop and its simple, profound rule. And I feel grateful for the small, smooth stone I left behind. Thank you so much for joining me on this little journey today. If you enjoyed this story, I'd be so grateful if you'd hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the strange and unusual corners of the world. Let me know in the comments, if you found a shop like this, what would you buy, and what piece of yourself would you be willing to leave behind? Stay curious, and I'll see you in the next video. Have you ever been so caught up in shopping that you completely lose track of time? You walk into a store when the sun is high, and by the time you leave, it's pitch black outside. It's a common feeling, especially during the frenzy of Black Friday. But what if it wasn't just a feeling? What if the store itself was messing with time? Today, we're diving into the strange tale of a department store that decided not to close on Black Friday, and the shoppers who walked out of it forever changed. Our story begins on what should have been a normal, albeit chaotic, Black Friday. We all know the drill: massive crowds, unbelievable deals, and that unique blend of excitement and exhaustion. Among the countless stores participating was a large, well-known department store called Starlight & Sons. It was an old establishment, one of those grand, multi-story buildings that felt like a relic from a different era, but it always drew huge crowds for its Black Friday sales. This particular year, Starlight & Sons announced something unprecedented. Instead of closing at the usual time, they would remain open until the last shopper leaves. It was a brilliant marketing move. People loved the idea. No more rushing, no more panic as the closing announcements echoed through the aisles. You could take your time, browse every department, and truly soak in the shopping experience. The doors opened at 6 p.m. on Thanksgiving, and the rush was immense. Thousands poured in, eager to snag the best deals. The hours ticked by. 8 p.m., 10 p.m., then midnight. Black Friday officially began. The store was still packed, a buzzing hive of activity. Employees, fueled by caffeine and holiday bonuses, kept restocking shelves and ringing up customers. But as the clock struck midnight, a few shoppers started to notice something off. It began subtly. A man named David was in the electronics department looking for a new TV. He'd been comparing models for what felt like 10 minutes. When he finally made his choice and looked at his watch, he was shocked to see that nearly an hour had passed. He brushed it off, thinking he was just tired and misjudged the time. But he wasn't the only one. Across the store, in the home goods section, a woman named Maria was searching for a specific set of dinnerware. She remembered seeing the clock on the wall read 12:15 a.m. She found the set, checked it for any imperfections, and then made her way to the checkout line. When she got there, she glanced at the same clock. It now read 12:20 a.m. She could have sworn she spent at least half an hour in the home goods section alone. It felt impossible. As the night wore on, these strange temporal inconsistencies became more frequent and more pronounced. People would enter an aisle and feel like they were there for an eternity, only to find that mere moments had passed. Others would blink, and it seemed like the store's layout had subtly shifted. The festive music playing over the speakers began to sound distorted, like a cassette tape being played at the wrong speed. The atmosphere inside Starlight & Sons started to change. The initial festive energy was replaced by a low hum of confusion and anxiety. Shoppers would look at each other with furrowed brows, asking, "What time do you have?" The answers were never consistent. One person's phone would say 2 a.m., another's would say 4:30 a.m., and the store's own clock seemed to be stuck, twitching between minutes. This is where the stories really start to diverge. We have accounts from people who claimed they were inside the store for what felt like days. One young man, a college student named Leo, said he wandered through the menswear department for what seemed like an entire weekend. He described watching employees restock the same rack of shirts over and over again, their movements becoming robotic and looped. He felt a growing sense of panic, an oppressive feeling that he was trapped in a cycle. When he finally found his way to an exit, he burst out into the pre-dawn light. His phone said it was 5 a.m. He had only been inside for a few hours, but he felt as though he had aged. Then there are the opposite accounts. A mother and daughter, Sarah and Emily, went in to buy a dollhouse. They said they were in and out in a flash. They walked in, went straight to the toy department on the 3rd floor, found the dollhouse, paid, and left. To them, the whole trip took no more than 15 minutes. But when they got to their car, they were stunned. The sun was rising. It was almost 6 a.m. They had entered the store just after midnight. Where had the 5 hours gone? They had no memory of it. It was just a blank space in their minds. The employees had their own bizarre experiences. A cashier named Jessica reported that the line of customers at her register never seemed to end. It was the same group of about 20 people, over and over. She would scan their items, they would pay, and then a few minutes later she'd look up and see the same faces at the back of the line, holding the exact same products. She started to feel like she was losing her mind, caught in a bizarre dream. She tried to call her manager, but her phone had no signal, a common complaint from everyone inside the store that night. What was happening inside Starlight & Sons? Theories began to fly. Some people believed it was a mass psychological event, a shared delusion brought on by the stress, lack of sleep, and sensory overload of a Black Friday sale. The strange lighting, the constant music, the sheer number of people, it all could have contributed to a collective distortion of time perception. Our brains are notoriously unreliable when it comes to tracking time, especially when we're deeply focused or highly stressed. But others were convinced something more paranormal was at play. The building that housed Starlight & Sons was old, very old. Local legends said it was built on the site of an old clock factory that had burned down under mysterious circumstances. Some stories claimed the factory's owner was obsessed with time and had been experimenting with strange temporal mechanics before the fire. Was it possible that some residual energy, some echo of the past, was awakened by the massive surge of human energy on Black Friday? Did the store become a place where the normal rules of time simply didn't apply? By 7 a.m. on Saturday morning, the store finally began to empty. The last few shoppers stumbled out, looking dazed and disoriented. They were met by concerned family members who had been waiting for hours, some having even filed missing person reports. The stories they told were wild and contradictory. Some shoppers were furious, claiming the store had held them captive. Others were just confused, unable to account for the lost hours. A few, strangely, seemed invigorated, as if their brief journey outside of time had refreshed them. Starlight and Sons never commented officially on the strange events of that night. They quietly returned to their normal business hours the following week. The open all-night promotion was never repeated. To the outside world, it was just a crazy, over-the-top Black Friday sale. But for those who were there, it was something much more. It was the night they stepped into a store and walked out of time itself. The story serves as a bizarre, modern folk tale, a cautionary tale about consumerism, perhaps, or just a spooky story to tell on a dark night. It makes you wonder, the next time you lose track of time in a store, is it just you being distracted? Or is there something else at play? Maybe some places have their own rhythm, their own pulse, and for one night, Starlight and Sons let everyone feel it. What do you think happened? Was it a psychological phenomenon or something supernatural? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And if you have any strange shopping stories of your own, I'd love to hear them. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this story, please consider liking the video and subscribing for more strange tales. Stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one. Have you ever been walking through an empty parking lot late at night and felt that prickly sensation on the back of your neck? That feeling that you're not entirely alone? Our story tonight begins in a place just like that, a sprawling, dimly lit parking lot of a suburban mall long after the last stores have closed. The kind of place where every distant sound seems amplified, where shadows play tricks on your eyes. Most shoppers had already gone home, their headlights tracing paths out onto the main road, but a few stragglers remained. Among them was a young couple, Liam and Chloe, who had just finished a late movie. They were laughing, replaying their favorite scenes, the sound echoing slightly in the vast, empty space. Their car was parked in a far corner, under a flickering sodium lamp that cast long, dancing shadows. As they walked, hand in hand, another sound joined the rhythm of their own footsteps. A soft, scraping shuffle. It seemed to be coming from just behind them. Liam paused, pulling Chloe to a stop. They both turned, expecting to see a security guard on patrol or another shopper. But there was nothing, just rows of silent, empty cars under the pale orange glow. Liam shrugged. "Probably just the wind," he said, trying to sound confident. But the air was still, heavy with the cool night. They started walking again, a little faster this time, and there it was again. Scrape, shuffle, scrape, shuffle. Closer now. It was unmistakable. It sounded like someone dragging their feet, deliberately trying to keep pace with them. Once more, they spun around, and once more they saw nothing. The rows of cars were still. The silence was absolute. Now, a genuine unease began to settle over them. The laughter was gone, replaced by a tense quiet. They quickened their pace, their own footsteps now sounding loud and panicked in the stillness. They didn't dare look back again. They just focused on their car, which was now only about 50 feet away. Then something happened that turned their unease into pure, cold fear. As they got closer, they heard a distinct click-thump. It was the sound of their car's central locking system. The doors had just unlocked. By themselves. They stared at their car, then at each other, eyes wide. Liam fumbled for his keys, his hand shaking. The key fob was still deep in his pocket. He hadn't touched it. Who, or what, was following them? And how did it unlock their car? This wasn't just a prank. This felt wrong. They broke into a run, covering the last few feet in seconds. They yanked open the doors, scrambled inside, and slammed them shut. Liam jammed the key into the ignition, his hands trembling so much it took 2 tries. The engine roared to life, shattering the oppressive silence. He hit the lock button on his door over and over, the thump, thump, thump. A frantic prayer against whatever was outside. He threw the car into reverse, tires squealing as he backed out of the space without even looking. He just needed to get away. As the headlights swung around, they swept across the parking lot, illuminating the spot where they had just been standing. For a split second, bathed in the bright white light, they both saw it. A figure. It was tall and unnaturally thin, standing perfectly still between 2 parked cars. It wasn't wearing any discernible clothing, its form just a stark, dark shape against the concrete, and as the light passed over it, it didn't seem to move or even react. It just stood there, watching. Liam floored the accelerator and the car shot forward, leaving the mall parking lot and the strange figure behind. They didn't speak for the entire drive home. What had they seen? Was it a person? A trick of the light? But how could a trick of the light unlock their car? They had no answers. This incident wasn't isolated. Over the next few weeks, similar reports started trickling into local forums and social media groups. People from the same town, often shopping at the same mall, described the same chilling experience. The sound of phantom footsteps, the feeling of being watched, and the inexplicable, unnerving unlocking of their car doors as they approached. One woman, Sarah, a nurse finishing a late shift, shared her story online. She was walking to her minivan, exhausted, when she heard the footsteps. Like Liam and Chloe, she turned to find no one there. But the sound was persistent, a slow, heavy tread that seemed to mimic her own pace. Her heart hammered in her chest. She clutched her keys so tightly her knuckles turned white. As she neared her van, she heard that same electronic click-thump. Her doors unlocked. She froze, her mind racing. Was someone hiding, waiting for her to get in? Instead of getting into the car, she backed away slowly, never taking her eyes off the vehicle. She pulled out her phone and pretended to be talking to someone, her voice loud and firm. "Yeah, I'm almost there. I see you waiting by the entrance." She kept backing up until she was under the brighter lights of the mall entrance where a security guard was just finishing his rounds. She explained what happened, her voice shaking. The guard, a kind, older man, walked her back to her van. They checked the inside, the back seat, under the car. Nothing. No one was there. But Sarah knew what she had heard, and she knew she hadn't unlocked her car. When she got home, she checked her car's key fob. The battery was almost dead. It barely had the power to lock the doors from a few feet away, let alone unlock them from the other side of the parking lot. The mystery only deepened. What could explain this phenomenon? Skeptics immediately pointed to radio frequency interference. Modern key fobs operate on specific radio frequencies. It's theoretically possible, they argued, that a powerful rogue signal could be broadcast in the area, randomly triggering the unlock function on certain cars. Perhaps a faulty ham radio antenna, a piece of industrial equipment, or even a military experiment. This could also explain the footsteps. People, already on edge in a dark parking lot, could be misinterpreting ambient sounds, their minds playing tricks on them. It's a rational explanation, a comforting one even. But it doesn't quite fit all the pieces. Why did the unlocking happen only when the car's owner was approaching? Why did it seem so timed? And why did it always coincide with that unnerving feeling of being followed by something unseen? Then there's the more unsettling theory, the one the locals whisper about in hushed tones. They talk about something ancient, something that dwells in the spaces we build over. Before the mall was built, the land was just open fields and a patch of old woods. Some say a presence lives there, a greeter of sorts. Not malicious, necessarily, but curious. It watches people come and go, day after day. It learns our patterns, our technology. According to this legend, the entity is drawn to the electronic signals we carry. It can mimic sounds, like footsteps, to get our attention. And perhaps it has learned to replicate the radio frequency of our key fobs. It's not trying to harm anyone. It's just interacting in the only way it knows how. Unlocking the door isn't a threat. It's a greeting. A bizarre, terrifying welcome home. Think about it. What's the first thing you do when you get to your car? You unlock it. The entity is simply anticipating your action. It's a ghost in the machine, a digital echo in an analog world. Of course, there's no proof. The stories remain just that, stories. But for those who have walked through that parking lot, who have heard those phantom footsteps and the sudden, impossible click of their own car door unlocking, the line between technology and the supernatural becomes blurry. Was it a simple radio glitch? Or was it something else reaching out from the shadows, trying to say hello? The next time you're walking to your car in the quiet of the night, and you hear a sound you can't place, just listen. And if you hear that telltale click, you have to ask yourself, who or what is welcoming you back? Thanks for watching. If you have a story about a strange encounter you can't explain, share it in the comments below. We'd love to hear it. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more dives into the unknown. Stay safe out there and always check the back seat.